Welcome to Business Mastery with Don Kennedy, your quick under 45-minute dose of expert insights and strategies to make a positive impact on your business and life. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. As you know, mastering business also means mastering yourself. Leadership development is critically important, and you as a human have to develop into that sustainable entrepreneur. So I have Gary on here. We're going to be talking today about you and your mindset and how you keep yourself sane in the business world, growing and thriving. Thanks, Gary, so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I think it is. So can you tell everyone who you are and who you serve?
So, my name is Gary Chupik. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I work with professional teams and athletes in their mindset. So, a lot of mental performance in the field of sports psychology. And I work more and more with business owners, believe it or not. So, when I first started, I was working primarily with athletes and teams, but over the course of the last, I would say, 10 years, it has shifted more and more to business owners because they're realizing that the same attributes that it takes to be successful in sports so many of those attributes can be crossed over to the business world. For example, does it matter that you have your self-talk under control as an athlete? Well, most certainly, but the same can be said for business. And so what you say to yourself is really important, and how you manage yourself and your business. And so I primarily work with the mental side of business leaders and business ownership and sports.
Let's just start here. Why isn't this like business 101 entrepreneur MBA training or business school training? Because no matter what degrees you have, I just don't think this is discussed enough. And this really is the game changer.
Well, your mindset it overflows into the different areas of your life. Like, it's the thermostat that controls the temperature in your home, in every room. And I think it's the same way when it comes to business. It's like your mindset and how you perceive yourself and the work that you do and how you perform. It all happens in your mind first. So if you're gonna, let's say, develop a product or a service, you have to kind of see it in your mind first. So that mind is not only a playground, but it's also a whiteboard. And so you're actually pre-practicing, we say in sports, but you're kind of like visioneering what this business or product or who you want to be is in your mind first. So we say in my world that everything happens twice, first in your mind and then in real life. And that speaks to an identity issue. That's like, who do I think I am, and what do I think my capabilities are, and what am I like, truly, what am I capable of if I get my mind right?
Yeah, that's important. So let's just start here. If you have somebody who plays basketball or baseball or something, which is kind of generally known what the rules are, you generally kind of understand, and you can teach someone maybe to envision hitting the ball or making the basket. But in entrepreneurship, when you're trying to think of something new or you're trying to think of something maybe in a different way, I don't know that we spend enough time maybe visioning before we say that's a great idea and we run out and do that. So how could we apply sort of this visioning to something that maybe is not as familiar as shooting baskets or hitting a baseball?
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. Like, we like to think about vision casting on a sort of a meta scale. But if you were to break it down in terms of your day, it's like, who do you foresee yourself as, and what do you see yourself doing on a daily basis? And so I think spending some time in the morning, sort of envisioning what your day is like and who you want to be, is crucial. So in my world, I kind of think of it on four, maybe four and a half different points that I think are really important as we think about, our vision that we have for our life, or the vision that we have for our business. And I first originated this teaching with sports, but the more I've practiced it and the more that I've taught it in the business world, the more applicable that I see that it is for almost the same reason. So number one is, like, you kind of have to know who you are. That identity issue is a huge one because you're the chief belief officer of your business and of your life. You're the CBO. And so what you believe about yourself and what you know about yourself is just absolutely crucial. Sometimes we wish we could be other people. People talk about, like, well, you should be doing your passions. I don't know about that. I actually I'm a little bit more skeptical of following our passions because they always change. But one of the things that's very solid and consistent is your identity. And so you have skills, traits, and abilities that are unique to you. It would be like in football, every position requires a different athletic skill set. And I think when an athlete is at their very best, they get hired or fired or demoted based on their ability to do that thing that they're really good at. So you take that strength and you maximize it and you find the right position for that athlete, and then you do more skill training and development. But in the same way in business, we all have a strength in business, and sort of double down on your strength, I think is really valuable. It's not at the expense of other things. Sometimes we have to work on our weaknesses, but we really do need to rely on our strengths and then hire around us. So knowing who you are is important. And the other reason why that's really important is because in order to succeed at anything, you have to have a level of consistency. And if you're trying to be somebody else, or sometimes we watch other videos or we see other people and we say, well, why can't I be like them? Why can't I have that attribute that they have? Well, it's not you. You know, you can develop your own attributes, but you're not that. In the long run, when things get difficult, not if they get difficult, but when they get difficult, you're going to default back to who you naturally are. And so knowing who you are is required to be consistent, and consistency is required to be successful. So the very first thing is having a picture of yourself that is accurate and brutally honest. And that's the first, there's three or four other points, but I don't know if you want to comment on that, but knowing who you are is pretty crucial.
I hear that, and I wonder how many people in the audience are listening and going, "Well, my role as CEO, that's who I am." A lot of times business owners will step into identifying with a role instead of with their person. Sort of like I'm assuming a pitcher identifies maybe as a pitcher, but they should know some things about themselves. Can we talk a little bit about if you're driving right now or you're listening in and you're like, I'm the CEO. What do you mean know myself? What do we need to be looking at? How can we develop that so we can be that authentic person? And then we could talk about how we hold that in mindset when like you said, something hits an iceberg.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And the reason why that's so important is because if you are your authentic self, regardless of the weaknesses that you have, but when you are your authentic self and you begin to align your desires with the way that you've been wired, that's where you're going to have the most consistency. So, in some ways, I like to think of it this way: it's like you almost have to surrender to the way that you've been made. Now, are there variations? Can you grow? Can you develop, evolve? Of course you can. But in the end, you have some pretty important things that are hardwired into your personality, and they're you. Like, for example, I'm a visionary. I want to take over the world. So in order for my business to succeed, I have to set aside time every day to dream. And then not only do I dream, but I make myself and I give myself another 30 minutes every single day to make those dreams come true. So I have actionable steps that I can take that are part of just who I am, because I'm just naturally wired to be that visionary. But when I add the action steps to my visionary, side of me, amazing things can happen. Like, for example, I thought to myself, I'm gonna try and get in contact with the best coach in NFL history that's presently living, which was Bill Belichick at the time for the New England Patriots. They had just come off a few Super Bowl wins, and so I had this dream of working with Bill Belichick, and so I tried forever to find his email. I finally found it, and it was the janitor at thepatriots.com. That was his email address. And I sent him an email and we chatted back and forth on email. And so I made my own dream come true, but I put those actionable steps. So I'm surrendered to the way that I've been wired and then maximize that. And then for everything else, I can hire for that.
Right. So it is very important to understand your wiring. What are your thoughts on some of the things like the personality test, the 16 personality or the discs or some of those other things that, we use sometimes maybe in hiring team members, but just taking it for yourself as the CEO, to see if any of that kind of helps you if you're having trouble seeing who you are.
Yeah, I love them all. I
You
mean,
list them all.
they all are teaching us something about ourselves. And some of them we may say, "Well, I'm not sure that's me," but there are some elements of truth or some nuggets there. And especially if I like what I like to do is to show my spouse the assessment. And then I like to see, well, Molly, what do you think about this? And is this true of me? And she'll say, not so much this, but definitely that. And at least it's fortifying that idea or belief that I have about myself. So yeah, I think all of them are good. And in fact, when I was in doing my master's degree in college, I had asked my professor if one of my master's assignments that I could do was assign myself the task of getting as many personality assessments as possible. And he thought that was a great idea. So I probably did about 10 or 20 personality assessments. And being a student, I just said, hey, I'm a poor student. I don't have any money, but can I take this assessment? I'd love to be able to promote it in the future. And so that was like 25 years ago, of course. But they did it. They were happy to pass along those assessments for free, being a college student. And so learn as much about you as you possibly can. So the first key is really identifying who you are, like pouring time and energy into figuring you out. The second thing, and that's so applicable to sports, maybe even more applicable to business, is you have to know what you want. And this is way more important than I think anyone gives it credit for, because if you don't know what you want, you will always be hesitant.
Yeah.
And if you're hesitant in sports, what does that cost? Like sports is a game of seconds or millimeters or inches or whatever. But in business, when you're hesitant and you don't know what you want, then how do you go get it? And are you willing to pay the price to go get it? Because it requires sacrifice. It requires intentionality. But if you're not sure and you're hesitant, you're going to lack the confidence necessary to be as successful as you want to be.
All right. So that was going to be my next kind of where we're going. So perfect segue. So the confident business owner, we hear that you have to act with confidence and decisiveness, and you have to act with the 100% personal accountability for every decision and every outcome. But in mindset, and a lot of the things you hear about it is, just think positively. It'll always work out. Or if you tell yourself positive things before you get on that call. And I think going back to first finding that authentic self and how you're hardwired, I think can lead to maybe some tips from you about, how do you show up confidently if you're here or here and what you're reading maybe doesn't resonate.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. I have a weird relationship with positivity. Um, I went to this mental performance conference, and I'm not a fan of positivity. I'll just be really upfront and honest. Maybe that's just my personality, but positivity is really fleeting. To me, it's a feeling. It's not anything more than that. So I can feel positive about something, and sometimes I have to lie to myself to be positive about something. Sometimes I have to overestimate my abilities. I'll say, I got this. I can do this. Well, maybe you don't have the training to do that. Maybe you haven't put in the time to do that. So to me, it's a very unreliable source of fuel to be able to, look at life and accomplish things. But I have something better than positivity. I believe that it's optimism. So optimism is like a lens that you see life through. And it's really important because I would rather work with an optimistic athlete or business owner than I would a positive one. And here's why. Because optimism always requires a reason for you to be optimistic. So if Don, you say, I'm going to jump out of a plane with a parachute, I'm going to be like, well, what reasons have you given yourself to be optimistic that you can jump out of this plane? And if you can give me the reasons, I'm right there with you. I'm cheering you on. I'm excited for you. But if you haven't taken classes, if you've never, been on the back of someone else who's been your guide, if you haven't done the classroom work, I'm not confident that you can do that. I'm not optimistic that you can actually do that. So optimism is really tricky, and I think it's a fleeting, or pardon me, positivity is a very fleeting thing, but optimism always requires that reason. And so when you work on the reasons to be optimistic about something, then you factually prove to yourself that you're capable of doing something. So when you lay your head on your pillow at night, you can say, you know what, I think I can be optimistic that I can do this because I've done similar things before and I can do them again.
I think this is really important because especially in the first early years of business until maybe you've scraped a knee or bumped an elbow, we have an optimism bias that we've given this idea, we're going to bring it to the world, and everything is going to lay out in front of us. And as long as we do XYZ, follow this thing, read these books, yeah, rosy, rosy all the time. So let's talk a little bit about kind of that optimism bias. And do you also see that in the sports world where somebody was maybe very successful at a certain level and then they come up and maybe all of a sudden there's been something that rocked their world a little bit and they realize maybe, oh, my success maybe has outgrown my knowledge or something like that, that might force us to step back from too much optimism bias and figuring out how to stay optimistic.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like there's something that I call idealistic distortion. So when
Okay.
we think that we are going to attempt to do something and we think, well, how could it not go great? And we just didn't even think of all the different dynamics involved and the complexity of it all. Yeah, we can get sort of sidetracked in thinking that, we got this when in reality, we just have to put in the work or the environment changes or the task changes or the role changes and it evolves. Sometimes our businesses outgrow their employees. And we have employees that are really great from 0 to 4 employees, but then from 4 to 10 employees, they just really struggle with the environment or being on a team. So you just kind of don't know. And your ability to adapt as a business owner is probably one of the greatest attributes that you can have. Athletes for sure need to adapt to as many environments as possible, but so do business owners. Like what we say with Navy SEALs and some of the education that I've done with them is I'll say, listen, when you can't plan, when you don't have a plan or you can't plan because you don't know the future oftentimes, but you can prepare. And so, what can you do to prepare yourself for unique environments? So, yeah, when you can't plan, prepare. And what does that mean? It means educating yourself. It means having a coach or a mentor in your life who's been there and done that. And though that kind of learning is crucial because business is hard work. Like even for me, it's hard work and it's constantly going climbing stairs into the wind. But at certain points, you need to take an elevator, and relationships are the elevator. And coaching relationships, mentoring relationships, having peer relationships, they're all crucial to your success. So don't underestimate the power of relationships in the midst of all this.
Yeah, very important. And I think too that'll help keep you grounded. To your point, being in a room where everybody's super positive, but the optimism and the evidence behind it may be a little shallow, could be detrimental, I think, to you being that adaptable because you're going to listen right to your peer group or at least consider their advice.
It's true. So just to circle back, knowing who you are, knowing what you want, and then the third thing is knowing why you want it. And this is an important emotional piece. Like we like to think that we're not emotional beings, we don't make emotional decisions, but my goodness, we make them every single day, and whether we recognize it or not. And so that emotional part of us is very, very strong. So knowing why you want something is really important. I mean, Simon Sinek, the author of the famous book, Start with Why. But Pete Carroll, coach of the Seattle Seahawks, told me at one point, he said, Gary, you can start with why, but it has to end with who. And so who do you want this for? It might be yourself. You might want to be successful and achieve something or prove somebody wrong or whatever it is. Like you're doing it for you, and that's great. But other times you want to do it for a spouse or a family member or a loved one or your children or a friend or a grandparent or whoever. You sort of kind of got to tie it emotionally to something. So when things get difficult, you'll say, wait a minute, like I can't let this person down or I don't want to let myself down. So it is knowing who you are, it's knowing what you want, it's knowing why you want it, who you want it for. And then the last thing is, it's just I hate to say it, but there's no other way around it, is you have to decide how badly you want something. And if you really want it, there's a price to pay for it. Everything in life, the great Thomas Sowell, the philosopher and historian, said, everything in life is a trade off. Every single thing. And where people get stuck is between wanting A and wanting B, where attributes of A, they might want B more, but they don't want to give up the attributes of A. And you can't have both. You have to make a decision and you're going to sacrifice some things. And so you have to know how badly you want something because there's sacrifice involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sacrificing, I hate to use the word lower level, but sacrificing something for something higher.
Mhm.
is definitely a key. So I do want your thoughts then on motivation, which we hear a lot about motivation. And I believe it was Mel Robbins who said motivation is like showering, you have to do it daily. Because motivation is not the same as discipline, mindset, and purpose. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have my own unique thoughts on motivation. I think you do need to find a certain amount every single day, but I think motivation's overrated. My own personal opinion. At the elite
Yeah.
levels, like think of like a Navy SEAL or think of a professional athlete. Are they motivated every day? Definitely not. And they will tell you that they're not motivated. But what is it inside of them that moves beyond the question, am I motivated or why am I doing this? But they move beyond that, and there's something else there beyond motivation. So I teach that the holy grail of all performance is self-leadership. Your ability to lead yourself even when you're not motivated is the holy grail. So I don't really need motivation. It's icing on top of the cake if I can find it or someone can find it. That's great that you have that, but motivation wanes, it goes up and down. It's an unstable fuel. But if you can self-lead, then it'll transcend that motivation. And so I teach something called the leadership pyramid. And then that bottom level is self-leadership. And your ability to lead yourself is like the base of everything that you do. And when you do that well, and then you could do couple leadership, which is leading another person. So it could be a mentoring relationship, it could be a coaching relationship, it could be just setting an example for somebody else. But don't lead somebody else if you're not showing good leadership. Why? Because you'll be a bad example to them. So that self-leadership piece is crucial. Then you have couple leadership, then you have group leadership, which is it's so important that you learn how to lead another person at that lower level, because when you're a group leader, you want to be mentoring and coaching and modeling that next leader for the group so they can either take over or go start their own group. So it's very much a growth mindset. And then if you lead at the group level, you can lead an area or department, but don't lead an area department if you've never done group or couple or show good self leadership. And then finally, there's organizational leadership at the very top. So it all hinges on the bottom layer, the foundation, which is self-leadership. And as you will know, in our businesses, we never stop leading ourselves. We never stop. Whether we're motivated or not, we have a job to do, and you don't need it to be motivated to be able to do it. There might be other factors, but in the end, it's your ability to lead yourself with character and integrity and discipline and strength. Those things just never end. And when they do in a business or organization, the the self-leadership of the primary leader affects the entire organization. And so if you decide one day that you want to tell a white lie, and then you have to cover it up by telling another person, and then a whole group finds out, and then an area department and the entire organization finds out that you've lied. Well, it's just hurt your credibility as a leader. But it's all because of the self-leadership of the primary leader. So that stuff never ends. Like investing in yourself, you having a high degree of integrity and character and self, that it never ends.
I'm really glad that you gave kind of those pillars of self leadership because I know that there are going to be people listening who say, well, I get my task list done every week. I do exactly what I say I'm going to get done, but it is just deeper than that and more than that. Having a to do list and just getting it done, but you're grumbling the entire time. And I really hate this and I don't want to do that does set the tone for everything that follows. So again, you were saying it's strength, integrity. What were the other 2? I'm sorry.
Character,
Character.
strength, integrity, character, honesty is another big one. I mean, people can kind of determine what they think it is for them. Like when I work with my clients, I'll say, so what does self-leadership look like to you? And in your situation. And so but those are the typical ones that come up, is just having that character and integrity and the self-leadership, the honesty, yeah, and the transparency.
Right, and that has to flow whether or not you're motivated every day, you've gotta make yourself do the thing, and I wanna make sure that that's kinda clear inside this episode that when we're talking about the mindset, we're talking about elite, and we're talking about, being able to hold the things when things are hitting icebergs, and it all has to start from this place of, the self leadership beyond just getting the checklist. So is that right? So
Agreed.
not just
Yeah, absolutely.
not just
And if you take a day off of your self-leadership, what happens?
yeah.
You just send stress fractures at the entire organization. So, really great leaders don't take days off.
So when you say don't take days off, I just want to make sure they don't take days off from self leadership, but they also are, as you were saying, training other people and to be able to do those things. I don't want anybody to misunderstand this as, oh, I gotta work myself every day. What?
Agree. Yeah. I mean, taking off the self leadership hat, you never really get to do because when you do and you let your guard down, that's when things happen. And so, as a leader, I've been a leader for 30 years, been a reluctant leader for a lot of those years. But even on my days off, I have to self lead and my ability to lead myself even on my days off. And so I can rest well. I can do nothing for a day, right? Like I can totally take the day off, but during that time, I'm still showing character. I'm still showing integrity. I'm still showing honesty. I'm still showing the discipline that it takes to go to the gym at 3:45 a.m. Like those I'm not saying I go to the gym because I don't go to the gym on the weekends, but during the week, 5 days a week, if I can make it, I definitely do. But I'm not talking about like, working 7 days a week, but what I am doing is saying I can even rest with intentionality so that when I come back to work on Monday, I'm ready and raring to go. But usually what that takes is for me to completely detach at least for a day or two.
Right. Right. So you said something about reluctant leadership. And in case anybody was listening in and their little ears parked up and they said, yeah, I don't really love what I'm doing anymore. I wish I could do something else, but and then list all the things, right? It's the third generation business where, well, I started this 10 years ago. I've got this sunk cost. I've got all these things. Because again, I do believe that that will definitely affect your mindset and your ability to show up for yourself and other people. Let's talk a little bit about what that could look like and then again how you can adjust it.
Yeah, it is really interesting. There are a lot of, and I'm aware of a lot of family businesses like that as well, where you are second and third generation. Like, I didn't really want this, but here it is, and I can't see myself doing anything else, so I'm just going to do that. But your heart's really not in it. And, I mean, that's a tough place to be. So I do something called the game plan for life, which is a 2-day experience I provide. People either fly to Seattle or they fly me to where they are. And it's kind of like, what's next with my life? Like, what am I supposed to do? How do I live a high performance life? And how do I know what what's next is based on my identity? And I think you can figure that out. But I also think that there's some flexibility with how we do this. Like for example, my wife loves to do what she has to do during the day so she can do what she wants to do in the evening. And so for her, what she does for her 8 hours is not the most important thing to her, as long as she's aligned and she's good at what she does. But she's not really finding her life and passion from those things. She's finding it after she gets home from work. Whereas for me, I find my life and passion when I do 8 or 10 hours a day. And in the evening time, I actually don't really want to do much because I've been either with people or doing my job at the highest ability and with integrity that I can. So I think there's different ways to think about this. So for example, for my wife, her job allows her to do the things that she really loves to do. And so she can have a good relationship with what she does during the day. I think everybody's different, but I think there's a level of acceptance and there's a level of latitude that we have about the way that we look at our jobs.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very interesting because again, we sort of step into sometimes the role of CEO or we started in the garage and our side hustle grew or we had an accidental success or we bought a business from someone else and we get sort of this vision of what we think it should look like and what you're saying is well it what it looks like maybe is not aligned with how you're hardwired. Maybe the way that you would set up your expectations or what I like to call shooting yourselves. Right?
Mm. Yeah.
What you should be doing, I'm shooting myself. Maybe is not aligned. So really you're giving people permission to say, "Hey, we need to figure out why you're optimistic. We need to figure out how you're hardwired. We need to figure out because all of those things or without all of those things, then the self-talk actually probably doesn't matter."
Yeah. There was a gentleman who was one of the founders of Mind Valley who have like the biggest self-help app on the Apple iStore. And so I had the opportunity to spend some time with him one-on-one for a while. And one of the things that he said to me that I've never forgotten was, Gary, you have to decide how big you want your business to be. Do you want to be a $200,000 company? Do you want to be a $2 million company? Do you want to be a $20 million company, or do you want to be a $200 million company? And he said, the sooner that you can figure that out, the better, because each of those end goals will take you down or require a different path. And he said, Gary, when we got to 20 million, he said, it's just stopped being fun anymore. I didn't want to do it. This thing that I had just a crucial role in beginning and starting, it just wasn't fun to me anymore. And I couldn't wait to quit. I just absolutely hated to go into work every day. I didn't want to do it, but I had the most fun at $2 million. So the 20 million he could tolerate, but after 20 million, it was just not fun anymore. And I think he's really right. And so I think as a business owner, if you can say, listen, if I can have, we can, gross revenue of $2 million, then, and if you know that, then you can start to fashion and move your business toward that goal or that achievement. But because it's a different path than 200 million, you're going to do things very differently. And that's okay. Whatever you choose is okay. It just knowing what you want is really important because it determines the path to get there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us, when we start businesses, we start from, well, we'll see how big it gets. Or I don't think that it's an intentional decision to go, you know what, when we hit this right here, our capacity is nice, our balance is nice, this is where we want to be. I don't know that actually a lot of us stop and even evaluate every year, is this still fun? Is this still something we want to do? And, circling back again to the integrity of the character, the leadership, liking what you do, all the things. Um, I think that's a great suggestion that anybody listening, if you don't know how big you want to get, you just have this expectation from the interwebs or from some book you read that you should just keep going for more. I think you made just a very important point right here that if you don't know where you're going to stop, how can you continue to show up at your best and for your best
Exactly.
self? Yeah.
I've led organizations where we had, 100 employees, and it's not fun. For me personally, it's just because who I have to become to lead that organization, I don't like that person.
Right.
And so I've had to realize that, you know what, a team of 10 or less is just the most fun for me. And right now, at this stage of my life, I'm 56. I just want to have more fun than I've ever had before. And I probably didn't feel that way. I think maybe I would have been driven more by success in my 30s and 40s. But in my 50s, I'm like, what is the most fun that I could have doing this? And for me, it's about 5 to 10 employees.
I love that. You've given us so much to think about. Where can people find you and learn more about you and perhaps do one of those 2-day sessions where they can plan things that maybe they haven't given themselves space to do in a while?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So most of my clients are on Instagram. So Elite Mindset is my handle, and I'm the one with the blue verification dot. So Elite Mindset, and then of course on LinkedIn it's Gary Chupik. And I want to give a free gift to your audience. It's a mindset assessment. I think it's the most thorough one on the internet. I just finished it a few months ago and want to give it as a free gift. So if they go to elitemindset.assessment.com, they can go there and type in the word elite, all caps, elite 100. They can take the assessment for free.
Oh, thank you so much. So we'll put all of that down inside the show notes, including the link. Set some time aside to do this assessment and see where you really are. And, when we're recording this, we're going to be heading into quarter four. It's going to be the busy time of year for a lot of people. So having an idea of where you're starting from in quarter four for 25 and then heading into 26 is, really important. And I think it'll definitely change some lives. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And one of my new endeavors is doing something called One Day Elevate. So it's one day come into your business and teach the business world what professional athletes already know. And so it's like these are things that can really help a business. Like for example, how to create a championship culture in your business, and culture is so important. And so it's like, what can we learn from a professional sports team and bring it into the business world? So I do a few talks like that too. So that's called One Day Elevate.
Amazing. All right, we're going to include that down there as well. And please make sure you take the time to reach out, and I'll definitely stalk you on Instagram and then do the assessment, because it's going to set you up for so much joy, success, and resilience. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, I'll talk to y'all next time on the next episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to DawnKKennedy.com, and you can now check us out on YouTube, as well as, of course, any of your favorite platforms that host podcasts. Take care.